digital distributor, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, from William Morris's perspective, they put themselves in a position to, eat a 360 lunch instead of being limited down to the 10% on a smaller piece of the pie, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's admirable, what they're doing, and I think it's what everybody needs to be doing, because things won't stay the same. Whatever's happened in the last year or two, things are going to continue changing, and everybody who's in business here needs to be ahead of the curve. And you talk about PS, they have their integral model. It's the same thing.
That's what I was talking. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
All right. So
for a higher distribution fee, they will do your marketing for you.
Okay, so we're looking at a distributor sort of going 360. We're looking at a marketing company going 360. We're looking at a talent agency going 360. Interesting. Stephen already mentioned the label, and we've already talked about that. Emma, is AM Only as the notable agency in the States for electronic music tempted to go 360?
No.
Has it gone 360?
I'm sure we there's things that each of us do. We don't offer it to one thing to all of our clients other than bookings. But at the end of the day, I think I can speak for a lot of DJs, and they'll tell you they don't want to put their eggs in one basket.
Hasn't AM Only recently entered into a joint venture with a management company with a notable signing?
I don't know if it's a joint venture, and we've had the management company down the hall from us for a long time.
Okay. Has there been a notable signing lately? I can't say, but maybe you can.
Are you talking about Tiesto?
Yeah.
We've been managing, that company's been managing Tiesto for a couple of years now, I think it is. Or at least a year and a half in America.
Well, something may have changed significantly, but so anyway.
I don't know the ins and outs of Tiesto's deal.
Okay,
but.
so you don't know whether or not AM Only is going for a 360 approach.
Well, we're gonna help our artists in any way they can, but at the end of the day, we work for the artist, we work for the manager. So if the manager...
Well, presumably Richard does as well, or his company, so that's not the point.
You mean putting a marketing company in our office? Is that what you mean?
That's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Obviously there's two ways to do it. You can either do deals with outside marketing companies or start one of your own in your own building.
Yeah, you have to remember, we do more than 50% of international artists. So that's where it gets tricky, because they also have agents in Europe, they also have labels in other countries. So it's like, even if all we'd be able to offer them probably is the US anyway.
Okay. Well, should I count this as a no for now?
You'd have to ask my boss, to be honest.
All right. And next year we'll get Paul to come down.
Yeah.
The worrying thing is that you can have 360 deals leading to 360 to 360. If you start off with your manager, which is a 360 deal in itself, you go to an agent who may do some kind of 360 deal with you. They're then going to back some rights onto a record label, and suddenly...
Well, yes, that is... there's an issue there that I want to come back to. And Stephen, I also want your take on, some conflict questions in all of this. But I wasn't quite done on this side of the table. Amy, when you described X-Ray Touring, you told me that your company does more than just bookings. Do you want to tell me about that a little?
Well, I kind of think that 360 it's too rigid a saying. We sit on a number of teams which are all circles. So we sit in, if you were a pie chart, I sit in larger parts of some circles than others. So in the case of Mark has an events division in his office. So I don't do tool room events right the way from beginning to end, because he has a girl in his office and we work as a team. For Swedish House Mafia, I do all of the events down to, I was interviewing transvestites this morning at 8 a.m. for the launch of our
That sounds like fun.
It was actually pretty good, but so, we do, and for Swedish House Mafia as well, we have an internet company on retainer that comes in through me, and we work on promotion with that and understanding our stats and our fan bases with that, and that's something that we're going to roll out across the whole company. We run the Swedish House Mafia merchandising store. We've just done a deal this morning. After my transvestite meeting, we did a deal this morning for all the Ibiza stores. But Mark doesn't need that, so it just depends, and I have acts with managers who just want shows. And I think it's about having a team and you put on the table what you want to do and how much you would like for that, and then you kind of divide your team up however you want to do it according to the strengths of the team.
Okay, so are you, in essence, you're offering an à la carte option where somebody can just go for bookings and somebody else might ask you to handle a merchandise, et cetera, correct?
Yeah, it's just very personal. I mean, we have a small roster. We're not in a William Morris way. We're not owned, by a multinational company. It's a small independent service that's tailor-made to the client. And instead of, I really dislike the word, and actually we're not really allowed to use the word 360 in X-ray because it's such a big term that people can kind of wield
publishing?
around. Huh?
Do you do publishing?
No, but...
Okay, so it won't be a 360 then. That's okay. We'll call it 270.
But at the moment, with Steve Angelo, I do manage him, so I do look after his publishing, and I've just got back from a very lucrative deal that we're going to do for Sinks and Films in the US. So in that case, yes, I totally did help him with that, but that's because he's asked me to do that.
Well, that's because you're his manager, and the manager's 360. We already established that in the very beginning, right?
But I don't really like the word 360. What does 360 mean? Does that mean I do his washing as well? What do I do? Where does that end?
I don't know how far your handholding skills go as a manager, but probably not, I would say. That's what the dry cleaners are for. So, Peter, we've heard a lot about these a la carte approaches of companies offering an array of services or offering to arrange an array of services. Now, meanwhile, you've been involved with major labels on the inside, and you've been consulting for entities on that scale from the outside. Is it an option to sort of just build everything yourself rather than outsourcing?
Well, record companies have been trying to get a piece of everything an artist has to offer as long as I'm in the record business. The older ones might remember there used to be record deals that accounted on 90% of sales and not on 100. That was from the breakage of Shellac Records, but it was very well active in 1985. There were deals in America, at least, where you only got paid a 3/4 mechanical for your publishing. They still happen today. A&M Records in America only paid you on 90% of all records sold and a 3/4 mechanical on that. So you effectively got much less. That is some sort of profit sharing. The theory behind it was always that your publishing isn't worth really anything unless I make it worth something through spending a ton of money in marketing and promotion. Record companies went further. When we ran London Records, we were associated with Polygram, and sometime in the 90s, Alan Levy thought we should be in 360 deals. And we were mandated to try and sign every artist to some sort of 360 deal, which is bloody difficult to sign artists for merchandising rights as a major label when you don't have a merchandising company. So they went out and bought one, which, according to the head of the finance for Polygram, was a huge disaster. About 6 months after the company closed, she found out that there was another factory in Mexico making T-shirts, and she never got a handle on it, what was going on. It was a shockingly bad business unless it's run by a real, truly entrepreneurial character. So Polygram, after about 3 years, gave up on the whole 360 thing because it didn't work. More recently, I worked for another company that I can't mention because I had to sign some NDA, but they in this year will write off $35 million of investments they made buying tour promotion companies in various territories in the world. The problem being that just because you are a terrific manager of a Brazilian company in the record business does not mean that you know the first thing about touring. And just because you are, the same in Germany, again, it doesn't make you a genius in the touring business. So their attempt of going into the touring business, they will tout in magazines as a big success, but it really isn't quite that big a success under the line. So major labels have had their problems. Of course, it's fantastic when you sign a new artist and you get their publishing and you get all these rights unquestioned, and it turns out to be a big success. That's brilliant. But I think when you talk about 360 deals, it's a totally different thing to talk about successful artists who have, strength to negotiate a deal whereby you as the label will have to pay them some sort of an advance to get their rights. Whereas, if Kurosh and I form a band tomorrow morning and they force us to a 360 deal, we will only sign that if we have no other choice. There's no question about it, you know.
So, okay, your answer is building the empire from scratch doesn't really work, or acquiring your way into a 360 operation doesn't really work.
Well, let's just face it, this is not, we're not just all buddies. Everybody's trying to build a business. Everybody's trying to pay the people that work there. Everybody's trying to build their artists because it's the only way they can build a business. But in the process of that, everybody who runs one of these companies has tried to get a piece of something valuable that they're doing. Publishing, in a case of a DJ, maybe not that exciting because they don't write songs. When you sign a band, very exciting stuff, There could be years after the band is gone, somebody else covers the song and it's a big hit. So if you have a label, of course, people have tried it. I think it's worthwhile in cases to try and do it, but are you going to get away with it broadly? I don't think you will. And
Well-
with artists that have a choice, no.
Well, okay, so just focusing on the entities of the scale that you're talking about, major labels, investment groups that have enough cash to buy a major label, couldn't they just settle for a percentage of the income, as Stephen described, as opposed to always looking to acquire the rights?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think they will. But they will once they figure out it isn't really working that
Okay,
well.
so let me modify your answer for you. In other words, their first inclination, the knee-jerk reaction, the leopard won't change its spot.
Is a
type of
land
thing.
grab, yeah.
Of course. So there's always the temptation to go for the rights grab, especially for the well-financed company that
Yeah,
is answerable to shareholders or to the public, correct?
not too many well-financed companies out there anymore.
Well, okay. Right, Stephen, you said your firm did the Robbie Williams deal. Is that deal public enough for you to say whether that was a rights deal or a percentage of income deal?
I can't talk about that deal. No,
Okay.
sorry.
Right. So I'm not going to venture to guess,
There's an
but
important difference with Robbie Williams, though, isn't there? I mean, X-Ray represent Robbie Williams for live, so obviously we were a key income source for the deal, which Stephen can't talk about, but he was an established artist at a major label where income streams were clear. It was a forecastable business.
it's okay.
That's the
But you
difference.
just answered the question for me. Thank you very much. Because that means that EMI, unless X-Ray is owned by EMI, that EMI did not go and build a touring division and acquire the touring rights, but was an income
No,
participant based on the income that you generated by booking the shows that you
Absolutely.
did.
Dead Mouse is the same. It wasn't.
All
it
right,
just-
so we got the answer after all. Very cool.
But Dead Mouse was with EMI very carefully going through all of the figures of what of what he owns.
Right. So, Stephen, in your experience, the share of income 360 is an option if you're well represented enough or savvy enough or have enough leverage in the negotiation to get there, correct?
Yeah, I think most labels will agree the income rather than the rights.
Will that be
Warner's
their
don't.
starting offer?
What, for
Share of income as opposed to share of rights?
most labels are going for income above rights, but I think
Oh, really?
the Warner Group go for rights every time. I mean, there's some do, some don't. Universal are not bad. But.
Very good. So, as a lawyer, do you feel that there's any type of conflict in this arrangement?
There's a massive conflict, I mean, a massive potential conflict. I mean,
Explain.
well, I mean, for example, you could use this example, not just to pick up on the panel, but it's saying if you're the agent and you're also managing that artist. Now, one of
There's
the
a conflict there, right?
Well, one of the manager's job is to make sure the agent's doing their job.
I tell myself off all the time. I give myself a really hard
and-
time.
Okay, so you need a split personality in order to keep things truly honest, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're looking over your own shoulder, which doesn't look
Exactly,
work
and
very
on a
well, right?
bigger scale, I mean, when people control like the recording rights and the publishing, and they're also your manager, you effectively don't have a manager because that person is always going to be more the label and the publisher than your personal manager.
It may also be illegal in some countries, like in America.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Tell me more about that.
Well, you can't be, if you sign a deal in the state of California, not only does it only allow a certain duration and a certain amount of options, you cannot be the agent, the manager, and the record company. You can have a couple, it's like 2 or 3 functions you can actually fulfill. You can participate in a couple of others, but you can't assume them.
Right, and as a manager, you can't.
It's called restraint of trade.
Right. Okay. What are some of the other conflicts, Stephen? You mentioned one, when you have a touring company also managing an artist. Okay.
Yeah, well, a manager who's involved,
With the publishing?
with the publishing,
Does that happen often?
Yeah, it can do. I mean, and also worse than that is if the manager is also taking commission as well on the writer's income,
Hopefully
which
not, right?
it happens.
Okay, so one of the conflicts is the lack of oversight, where you usually have a checks and balances system between separate labels and
Yeah.
publishers, and the other being the double dip.
Yeah, I mean, I've got also an interesting reverse situation, which I'm finding is happening in a lot of majors now. And certainly from on high, there's a directive for the majors to start managing their artists. And I've got quite a big artist on a major label who controls that band's recording rights, and the individual also publishes that band, and the label are now looking to take 50% of the manager's commission effectively they're not taking the artist's live income, but they're getting hold of it by the manager.
So they've got the manager by the ball somehow.
Exactly, and then the manager's in
Are there
bed with the
pictures
label.
involved?
Huh?
Are there pictures involved? Okay. So,
But it's not new, right? I mean, this has been going on since people were managing a couple of hookers and a jazz saxophone player. This stuff. This has been going on for a very long time.
and the problems remain the same, right?
The problems are the same.
I think it's reasonable. I think most people would say it's reasonable for a record company to look to share in additional revenue streams if they're being asked to tour support bands and things like that, because the numbers just don't add up. But in certain other areas, I think it's just greed.
Okay, so if your client had a manager, and the manager sends you a contract with Richards Company saying that, okay, we're going to have Richards Company handle the next album release, would you feel duty bound to alert your client of this stacked commission?
Yeah, I'd have the manager bearing his costs.
So in other words, you have a marketing company doing the manager's job?
Well, I mean, I would say, come on, this guy's doing part of your job, so it should come out of your commission.
Partially or wholly?
Depends how.
Oh, here we go. So now we're striking a deal. All right.
No. Well, you can't. I don't think you can. I think a manager manages the marketing. I mean, you're hiring a marketing company. First of all, they're probably not going to do the marketing for the world. They're doing it for a certain territory. And if a manager makes a 15, 18, 20% commission of an artist, you're going to pay a marketing company from that and pay him a fee, a monthly fee. That would be.
If all they're doing is hiring, it depends what they're doing. I mean, if they're effectively just recruiting certain individuals, to me that is.
Well, that's obviously. I'm going to say that's obviously not what we do. That's
right.
one
No, I know, but
tiny
that's what I'm
part
saying. Yeah,
of
sure.
what.
No, you're right. You're
we
right.
do.
But I mean, that's a manager hires helps to hire an agent, and an agent goes out and finds employment situations yet again for the artist. I mean, this sort of thing does happen a little bit. There has to be a net benefit to the artist going that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're right.
All right,
Otherwise,
so let's look at the net benefit, because from what Richard described is basically you're taking the same approach as Simply Red did to their last release, which was financially rewarding to have gone about that way, and written about enough to sort of become something that we talk about at these conferences. Fine. So you're saying instead of getting a 20% royalty, all of a sudden Natalie's looking at an 80% piece of the pie. Fair enough. And at the same time, you guys need to obviously be paid for your services. The companies that you outsource to need to be paid for their services. The manager who hired you needs to be paid for his services. And to me, the concern is if, as Peter said, there has to be, there is some sort of reward at the end of this where Natalie looks at it and says, okay, so instead of 20%, I got 40%, notwithstanding all the commissions I paid, could be a fair deal, but isn't it, Stephen, isn't it critical in that scenario to have full disclosure of the entire arrangement?
Can I just chuck something into the equation there? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people